On Giants. Mounds, Monsters, Myth and Man, or Why We Want to Be Small, by Brad Lockwood.
Copyright 2010, Brad Lockwood, all rights reserved.
Strangely, his multi-volume work is now the basis for multiple conspiracy theories, with many trying to say that Thomas failed to see or outright ignored the truth. His and the Smithsonian's credibility is constantly being questioned.
The great interloper of ancient burial grounds, the 19th century Smithsonian Institute, sealed the door on our imaginations,
wrote Vine Deloria, a, quote, noted Native American author and professor of law emeritus, end quote. Overplaying Thomas's preconceptions while downplaying his overriding amazement at many discoveries. It is clear that most who criticize Thomas never took the time to read his reports to the Smithsonian, and certainly not the entire 730-page final volume. Laws prohibiting ransacking of native burial grounds didn't exist at the time of the Thomas expedition, and only at last emerged and were enforced after his work was complete. Still, the basis of conspiracies surrounding the findings and conclusions highlight, quote, trespassing, end quote, on such sites. Nor do critics rely on Thomas's actual finds, but more conveniently and paradoxically point to what he didn't find. Was he too accurate? His study too definitive and inconvenient for those who believe? Or, as many try to purport, as conspiratorial as ever, that entire loads of boxes of bones and advanced technologies unearthed by Thomas were spirited into the middle of the Atlantic Ocean and dumped overboard? Seriously, that's what people try to say about Thomas and what he found. Were the Freemasons involved in this too? It seems that nothing will satisfy or sway those of faith. The Smithsonian Institution's position, including its vulnerabilities to political influence and Judeo-Christian inclinations, offered a tainted yet thorough official record on forts and mounds in America. But at least it was published for the public to review. If only those of faith would take the time to actually read it, or do some original work of their own, instead of criticizing them from entrenched and uninformed viewpoints. I ran into this personally. I was interviewed while this program has been coming out, asked to do an interview on a certain radio show, and when the producer called me to talk about what we were going to discuss, the point came out that I was questioning the existence of giants, and this quote-unquote researcher said, well, I can't have you on my show because you don't believe in giants. And when I brought up the fact that maybe opposing viewpoints would be helpful to their listeners, that was shrugged off and I was disinvited from the program. Anyway, when aware of the inherent bias of all parties involved in the debate over giants, is it no wonder that all should be treated with suspicion, especially the Mormons. The one organization that does the most work on giants has the greatest stake in the debate in giants. Mound excavations have been ongoing for centuries, and Thomas Jefferson is credited with the first formal documented attempt on his own land in Virginia. Others followed, official and illicit. The Zelf Mound was excavated in the early 1830s by followers of Joseph+Smith, who then asked for his insights on the site as a prophet. If found, and the story of the Zelf Mound has changed too many times to be confirmed, giants in America will prove the underlying story of the Book of Mormon. A disputed archaeological find itself, purportedly first viewed by Joseph+Smith in 1823, then, quote, received 4 years later, but inexplicably lost. This, quote, revelatory event from God to man, end quote, would be proven true if evidence of a lost tribe were found in America. Smith and his followers would be fully vindicated. Having spoken with self-titled, quote, staff archaeologist, end quote, Michael Smith in Salt Lake City, I found unusual comfort in the Church of Latter-day Saints and its approach to artifacts is more based on technical insights than religious quests. Smith has a Ph.D. and is a professional archaeologist, well-versed in pre-Columbian and transatlantic find and theories. However, he would not speak for other groups aligned with the church who act on their own, performing their own excavations and declaring dubious finds. Given the church's history,
Footnote.
Early polygamy, as well as beliefs that the actual skin of natives converted and or adopted would lighten, reverting to its true color, just to name a few. Posthumously converting all Jewish victims of the World War II Holocaust undermines the Mormons' modern argument of being open and ethical either.
It is little wonder why multiple fort and mound museums, even national parks, were rather concerned about my interest in their earthworks, history, and hours of operation. None asked my religion, but all seemed wary of any influence or bias, with one even mentioning recent illegal excavations on protected burial grounds, which they suspect to have been performed by Mormons.
Coming up next.
On Giants.
Osama Bin Laden is supposedly a towering, secretive, holy warrior. Solitary and standing between 6'3" and 6'5", this image has been reinforced for decades. By us. Mostly through footage showing him standing or sitting alone with maybe one other person in view, hardly offering any accurate, measurable physical perspective. Is it accurate? Since America created him by funding the Mujahideen fighters to defend Afghanistan from the USSR in the 1980s, we needed our man Osama, tall and holier than thou, especially compared to godless communist invaders. But now, after 9/11 and America's failed occupation of Iraq and Afghanistan, Osama's physical prowess is being demoted.